Today, let's talk about what's a healthy way for people with diabetes to eat. First, we need to know what's happening in our bodies when we eat. When I eat, the food goes into my stomach and then into my intestines. Food contains different nutrients, and the ones called carbohydrates can affect my blood sugar or glucose level. Carbohydrates include both starches and sugars. Sugars are absorbed from the intestines into the bloodstream as sugar. Starches are really just a long chain of sugars, and when they get to the intestine, they're broken down into sugars and absorbed into the bloodstream as sugar. So both starch and sugars can raise your blood sugar if you consume too much. Your body needs insulin to absorb the sugar from the bloodstream and use it for energy. When you eat, normally the pancreas produces enough insulin to do this. But when you have diabetes, either there's not enough insulin or the insulin isn't working well. So not enough of the sugar can get into the cells. This causes the blood sugar level to rise to unhealthy levels. So when we talk about what's the healthiest way to eat for someone with diabetes, we need to realize that people with diabetes need to limit carbohydrates in their diet to just what their bodies need and not a lot more than that in order to keep their blood sugars from rising to unhealthful levels after eating. You might say, why not just skip the carbohydrates altogether if they raise my blood sugar levels? Well, we still need carbohydrates for energy and for optimal brain function, and there are many carbohydrate foods that are health promoting when consumed in appropriate amounts. Carbohydrate amount is the most important factor. The more carbohydrate you consume at one time, the more your blood sugar will rise after that meal or snack. If you eat a smaller amount of carbohydrate more frequently throughout the day, you'll see smaller rises in blood sugar compared to the larger and more damaging increases in your blood sugar that you see when you consume larger amounts of carbohydrate at one time. A typical person with diabetes might need somewhere in the range of 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate at each meal and 0 to 15 grams at each snack. Depending on the individual circumstances of the person, they might even need more or less than these numbers. A dietitian or some physicians can help you figure out how much you need based on your individual circumstances. In addition to the amount of carbohydrates, another factor which affects a carbohydrate food's impact on the blood sugar is the type of carbohydrate. Some carbohydrate foods like fruits, whole grains, low-fat milk or yogurt, and beans are better than others like candy, juice, or refined grains. Not only are they more nutrient-rich, but many of them also tend to raise blood sugars more slowly because they have more fiber and sometimes contain some protein or fat as well. These nutrients, fiber, fat, and protein, tend to lengthen the time needed to digest food in the stomach and will be more slowly released, leading to a slower and less damaging spike in blood sugars. More processed foods, like cold cereal, are often absorbed more quickly and spike blood sugar more than less processed foods like cooked oatmeal. So we're looking for carbohydrate foods which contain some fiber or protein or a little healthy fat, and we're also looking for less processed foods on average. A final factor is how other foods in the meal besides the carbohydrates affect absorption. If I consume a cup of rice by itself, it'll actually spike my blood sugar up higher than if I consume it with other non-carbohydrate foods like chicken, salad, and olive oil. That's because these other foods contain nutrients like protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Those nutrients, when consumed in the same meal, can slow down the processing time in the stomach and spread out the time that the carbohydrate actually arrives in the intestine and is absorbed into the bloodstream. This leads to a lower spike in blood sugar after eating. There are other issues to consider besides the effect of food on blood sugars. We need to remember that diabetes is a big risk factor for heart disease, so we still need to follow a heart-healthy diet containing vegetables, fruits, whole grains, lean sources of protein, and heart-healthy fats. You also need to know that there are a variety of healthy eating patterns that someone with diabetes can follow. Different bodies sometimes react differently to different foods. It is important to check blood sugars 2 hours after different meals and write down what you ate. You can evaluate this information with the help of your dietitian, diabetes educator, or doctor to see what works best for you. Remember that an ideal eating pattern may not be doable for you given your circumstances and preferences. What you want to aim for is just the best eating pattern that you can follow in the long term. Then you can evaluate your blood sugars and other laboratory values with your doctor or educator to determine if you need to make further changes in physical activity, medication, or insulin in order to achieve your healthy goals.